Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Dan Rubenstein, we called it Snake in the Toilet Saturday.
Yeah.
I saw Matt Barry on ESPN called it eye test Saturday. I don't know what that means.
Weak.
Don't really care to know what that means.
Yeah. Didn't we have something, a part of the eye that started with an S that we used for alliterative purposes last year?
I think so. I think so. But look, doesn't really matter. Week 13 now officially in the books. We did have a couple snakes in the toilet that we'll talk through. I suppose there were a couple eye tests if you want to get technical.
Sclera.
Sclera Saturday?
Yeah.
I believe we had a couple eye tests that maybe we could talk through that maybe some teams passed.
Sure.
It was a week that I think was short on headliner games, if I'm being honest for a second, okay?
Yeah, set the table. Set the table Saturday.
I know I'm supposed to be gung-ho about every college football weekend, and I was about this one. Yeah. We did a 4-hour live stream talking about Oregon USC, which we'll get to here in just a little bit. But if I'm being honest, because this is a show about honesty, there weren't a lot of headliner matchups. But doesn't mean it wasn't interesting, though. And I think that's the important point here. We've got a lot of interesting things that we need to get through to unpack all that Week 13 had in store for us, what it means going into an absolutely friggin' enormous Week 14 rivalry week, going into conference championship week. This was sort of a table setter week of sorts, a calm before a proverbial storm that I think is coming. So it is ever more important that we do this stream tonight, that we do this recording right now to get folks ready for what is in store and help them understand what just transpired, sir. Welcome back to the show. It is great to be with you. It is late. We're a little bleary-eyed. We got mushroom coffee swimming in our veins, but we are ready to talk college football, my friend. Where are we starting off?
Well, first of all, I would take a slight exception. I know you didn't mean any ill will about it, but it was actually a really fun, reinforcing weekend. It was a reinforcement of okay, is this a thing that we should establish as certain? And when you see Florida State struggle in the very specific way that they struggled, when you see New Mexico, by the way, we can just lead with New Mexico if you want, taking it to Air Force.
Lobo pride, baby.
I want to say New Mexico with a win against San Diego State, winning they're in the Mountain West Championship game because they hold tiebreakers, I want to say, against both UNLV. They haven't beaten Boise, but it was UNLV and I forget the other team, but they would have it against San Diego State as well. So they're in a nice position. But yeah, I think it reinforced a lot across the sport, even if the games weren't, replete with, ranked against ranked. I think there was a lot across the sport that I don't know about Illinois. Well, Illinois wasn't there. I don't know about Colorado. Well, Colorado's not there. I don't know if BYU can win this tough one. They've had some struggles on the road. No, they can. They keep winning tough ones on the road because they're a tough, good team. And so I thought there was a lot of reinforcing ahead of a lot of big final rivalry week matchups, which I think was very important because I think we can etch a lot into stone in this moment.
Well, look, why don't we start there?
Okay.
Let's stick with the reinforcement theme and we'll kind of talk that through. Again, for people tuning in, we've got your voice messages that we're going to play a little bit later on in the episode. Depending on how long this goes, maybe we'll get to some YouTube comments and questions for the people who have taken the time to stay up late with us and watch us do our thing live. We're also going to do dude alerts a little bit later on in the episode. And in the interim, we're going to try to go through all of the biggest action and the storylines that we think matter the most. What was most reinforced to you? If you had to pick a game out of what we saw in Week 13, which storyline, which narrative, which belief that you held dear would you say was reinforced the most in Week 13?
A lot of people said Charlotte was going to beat Georgia, and I've all season long have circled this as a big Georgia. No, which was the most reinforcing outcome to me? I thought Oregon over at USC actually reinforced a lot of what we've talked about in both really impressive ways with USC and sort of what has ailed USC, and at the same time what has been very impressive about Oregon, and at the same time, some concerns about Oregon. So I thought that checked a lot of boxes, and it just so happens to have been the headliner of the weekend.
It was. And
that
we did
Oklahoma, Mizzou. Yeah.
Oklahoma, Mizzou, which maybe we could talk about next, which I think reinforced some stuff in its own right. But yeah, Oregon wins 42 to 27. We did the 4-hour stream for this game. Thank you to everybody who stopped by. I feel like it went much the way we thought it was going to go. You know, there was some nuance here and there, but by and large, you and I were both pretty spot on. I think my final prediction was something like 38-25, wasn't really that far off. And the reason that I went there is because to me, it felt like a bit of a rather obvious mismatch. That being USC's rushing defense versus an Oregon rushing attack that has been very good. I remember talking through with you all the guys who averaged 6 or more yards per carry on the Oregon side. Not to say that's the only way that they're going to beat a team, but it's one of the ways that they've been successful in winning so far this season. And as we saw this game go on, Oregon did lean progressively more and more on that ground assault as the game wore on. You know, it was apparent the deeper we got into this thing that they could use that, they could possess the ball, they could wear USC down. That to me was sort of obvious going in and even more obvious coming out. But like, I think the thing that really was reinforcing to me as I think about how Oregon won this game, we knew USC was going to score.
Yeah.
We knew they were going to score. And I think by and large, it's a pretty good effort on the USC side. Jade Mayava, the wideouts, all that stuff kind of was assumed going in. What was really reinforced to me is what Oregon can do in the trenches, specifically with their defensive line. They're banged up as hell along the offensive line. But as far as the defensive line goes, they allowed just 52 yards on the ground, due in no small part because of that defensive front. And secondly, and I would say most importantly against an offense like this, didn't have any sacks, but pressured the hell out of Jade Mayava.
Yep.
And
forced a fumble.
Forced a fumble. Yeah. But it was one of those deals where they were forcing him out of rhythm, forcing him to make some throws a little bit sooner than he would like. He kind of buckled under the pressure from time to time. It was forcing throws into double, triple coverage. Had 2 interceptions, probably could have had more in this football game. I just thought they did a really good job using that pressure to their advantage, which again was something that I thought coming in, but you never really know when you're going up against a good offense until you see it go down. And I thought Oregon did a really good job on that front. So I credit what they can do and have done all season along the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, look, you start with the injuries too. Both of these teams were beat up along the offensive line. Obviously, USC missing their starting safeties is a big deal in this one. When Oregon had the success that they had through the air, both, you know, down the seam to guys like Kenyon Sadiq, Malik Benson made big plays. You mentioned Oregon running the ball. They were able to do so without their starting right tackle for a chunk of this game, starting center for a chunk of this game, left tackle in and out of this game. Look, for as impressive as the throws were on both sides of the ball, I think you just got to tip your cap to how well those refs threw those yellow flags, Ty. They're going to be icing those shoulders.
Here we go again with this.
I'm just telling you, Ty, in terms of the accuracy, you know, you prepare yourself for a game like this. If you're a referee, you know, all off season long, and you're going to say, I'm going to get in my reps and just throwing that flag. I don't want to belabor the point, but they were obviously terrible. They were like, anybody who watched even accidentally came across this game were like, oh, these are terrible referees. USC fans, I'm sure, feel that they were terrible referees at certain moments, and Oregon fans felt that they were terrible referees. I'm not even going to say it was terrible officiating. I'm going to say, personally speaking, they are terrible at what they do. And of course, the game ended with Gary Danielson ended the game, and this is like his second to last game, I think, for CBS. He's like, I thought the refs did a great job. And that was about all I needed to know. That was about all I needed to know to reinforce, to go with the theme, in my opinion here. Oregon made more plays. They had the punt return for a touchdown. They had the interceptions. They had the big passes up the seam. They had the big third down conversions. They had the big runs for touchdowns. They made plays on defense. And USC, while in great individual plays at times, it was Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane. Yeah. It was a struggle for USC at times. They were abysmal on special teams, and they gave away too many free yards, and they couldn't at all establish anything on the ground. I was seeing USC fans talk about how they're like a 300 through the air, 200 on the ground type team. King Miller had 30 yards, I want to say. Did he have 30? 15 carries for 30 yards. So Oregon, as you mentioned, did a great job. Bear Alexander, the USC transfer, did a great job for Oregon. And the Ducks were just able to make more plays. There were times when it seemed like USC decided, like, what if we just built the whole plane out of pass interference? The old, I was about to say the Jane Pauley, not the Jane Pauley, the Jane Costin all PI offense.
Right.
And it worked for them. It really
did
work. And so it was an impressive performance from Oregon. USC marched down the field quickly to start the game, but otherwise it was a great individual moment here or there for these receivers for USC. It was a much more complete performance from Oregon. And, closing out, you mentioned the long drive in the fourth quarter. They just did more right things more often in this game, and they have more good players at more positions who are better prepared to make more successful plays. And so I came away much more impressed with Oregon as a coach team. At one point, USC had a receiver trying to start a fight on the Oregon sideline.
That was special. I did enjoy that. We were doing our stream. That was fun. That was fun to discuss on the stream.
Not an ideal moment to point to where USC is at in terms of having players ready to compete on the general public side of the field. A really nice win for Oregon in a tough spot.
I misspoke. Mateo Uiagalelei had the 1 sack for Oregon.
That was on the forced fumble, I think.
That was on the forced fumble. Yeah, and the shout out to One Swell Foop who tweeted us and said that USC really put the special in special teams today with a free kick out of bounds. They hit a player that called for a fair catch, leaping foul on a missed Oregon field goal that extended a drive.
Led to a touchdown, I believe. Yeah.
Allowed a kick return touchdown and missed a short field goal. Thank you for that tweet.
Yeah.
Apologies. I know this gentleman's the USC guy, but Oregon gets the win here. This is a pretty big win. It was, I think, the biggest remaining hurdle for the Ducks. Nothing is clinched as of now in the Big Ten. I mean, I guess Indiana pretty much has it sewn up, but in terms of what the game actually looks like in the Big Ten title, there are mathematical possibilities for Oregon, obviously for Ohio State, even for Michigan, depending on what happens next week in that Michigan-Ohio State game. We will talk through all of those scenarios on one of our episodes coming up this week. But this is more of a recurring theme across college football.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of other games go down, and maybe we could talk about Oklahoma, Missouri next, but the SEC is in this camp. The ACC is in this camp. The Big 12 is in this camp. Though we have a little bit more clarity about who is going to be playing for these conferences, none of these games, none of these matchups are officially clinched at this point, which I think sets up an incredible Week 14.
Agree.
There is so much that remains up in the air. One of the things that came up this week, I should say, as a result of Oklahoma knocking off Alabama a week ago, after we saw these college football playoff rankings, after we saw that Oklahoma had climbed all the way up to number 8, this was an opportunity in Week 13 for Oklahoma to reinforce its standing as a potential college football playoff team. Missouri got Bo Pribula back, right? He's been injured for a while. Bo Pribula comes back. Missouri's got a pretty good defense. They've got a beast of a ground assault. There was, I think, a real train of thought here, and you and I spoke to this when we did the preview, that maybe Oklahoma is going to be sitting in a bit of a letdown spot. This game was at home, but this was for Mizzou sort of like a last gasp to try and get one over on the SEC, not to necessarily play for anything conference-wise, but if only to assert themselves and have a real impact on the conference race and make their mark on things here down the stretch.
And win their first game against a team with a winning record, despite being ranked.
You
and
said
having
it, not me.
A signature win against Kansas. And it's always good for Mizzou to beat Kansas, let's be clear. And it's always good for Kansas to beat Mizzou. But also, we have a conversation about, like, they have this many wins over ranked teams, and they beat number 22 or whatever Mizzou. And also, Mizzou is not that good. So, I don't know. Oklahoma-Mizzou was a rock fight, which we talked about. Oklahoma was not able to move that ball consistently, though they did have a very impressive long touchdown pass. I believe it was Mateer to Isaiah Satania.
Yeah.
Isaac Satania. Yeah.
Isaiah Satania. Yeah.
Isaiah Satania. Okay. I got it right first time. And Mizzou is basically counting on its defensive front and its defense as a whole doing enough to help the offense accidentally score more than Oklahoma. That was essentially the best hope. Obviously, Ahmad Hardy is incredible for Mizzou, but he doesn't call plays. He doesn't throw passes. He doesn't block and occupy all 5 positions on the offensive line. Mizzou could not throw the ball, and literally, it looked like Bo Prabula struggled to throw the ball at times coming back from injury. I think he was listed as questionable before this game. It was not probable. He was not listed as playing. So this was I think, near game time decision. And Bo Prabula just did not look like an upper 2/3 of the SEC level quarterback in this one. And maybe that's a health thing. That maybe it's, being rusty from missing as much time as he has.
I mean, hell,
injury.
When Mateer came back from his injury, albeit a different kind of injury, that was
Definitely.
his hand. But, when Mateer came back for that Texas game, he didn't look the part either.
Yeah.
That was not his best game. This was truly a rock fight.
Yeah.
There were 12 punts. There was a total between both teams of 577 yards. Obviously, 23 total points. The final score was 17-6 in favor of Oklahoma. There were large chunks of this game that felt like it was an Iowa game.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying that as a pejorative, but just two decent defenses, obviously, at a minimum decent defenses, good, very good at best, making it very ugly.
I mean, it felt like a 2011 SEC game between two teams who weren't in the SEC, were about to be in the real old school SEC.
So I think there were a couple stories that came out of this one for me. The first is that Bo Prabula did play.
Yeah.
And I disagree a little bit. I thought he looked okay, given that he was coming back from injury and given that, the status was questionable pretty much all week. But the problem was that they needed more than okay.
Yes.
To beat a team, to beat a defense this good, they needed a superstar, and he wasn't that today. That doesn't mean he can't get there, but he wasn't there in this football game. And they needed the superstar because Oklahoma shut down Ahmad Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
They shut down the Mizzou rushing attack. They got constant pressure on Bo Prabula. They sacked him 4 times. They picked him off twice. So this was, again, I think more to the point, the way that Oklahoma has chosen to win games this year. They're not scoring 30 points a game. This is not a dynamic offense, though the offense has dynamic players. This is a team that is led by its defense, with a defense-first head football coach and Brent Venables, who's been very good at coaching defense over the years. This is how they have chosen to win, and they are now one step away, one win away. All they got to do is beat LSU, who, by the way, struggled with Western Kentucky tonight. You beat LSU, you're in the playoffs. You're probably hosting a first-round game in Norman against, right now I think it's set up as Notre Dame. Could be a number of teams depending on how things shake out these last 2 weeks. So, I'm not exactly sure how to feel about Oklahoma in that situation, which maybe we can talk about here. But at least within the context of this one, they were just kind of suffocating with their defense, and Mizzou just didn't feel like they could get anything going. No momentum on offense whatsoever.
By the way, I think this is how you should and everybody should feel about Oklahoma. Because coming into the season, we looked at the schedule and we said Michigan, Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Mizzou, LSU.
I know it.
And obviously we understand the context of their schedule. There is a decent, I'd say there's a good to very good chance they're about to go 10-2 against this schedule and go to the college football playoff.
Which is wild.
You should feel incredible about Oklahoma. You said they're not a 30-point per game team. Their offense has not scored 30 points once in the SEC. Right? They had a defensive touchdown against Tennessee to go to 33. So you should feel incredible about the job that Oklahoma has done with Brent Venables, winning in a very specific way, weathering what could have been a catastrophic quarterback injury. This has been nothing short of a terrific season for Oklahoma. Not always pretty.
No.
Somehow...
It just needs to work, though, right?
It just needs to work. By the way, here's the sidebar here. 4th and 3, Mizzou, I want to say in the red zone or near the red zone. They decide to call a timeout, get a perfect plan to go for it on 4th and 3. Then Brent Venables calls a timeout. And then Mizzou comes out and attempts the field goal and misses the field goal. And at that moment, I said to myself, I don't know if I love Mizzou long-term under Eli Drinkwitz. I don't know if this is the guy. He came out after the game and said, like, yeah, they saw our look on offense. And we were like, I guess they saw it. We got to kick now. It's like, man, what a depressing turn of events if you're a Mizzou fan there. And I think they had the lead in that moment.
Right.
3-0. So I don't know. Really nice win for Oklahoma. And they have a really nice opportunity to put a cherry on top of an impressive season next week against LSU.
Against LSU, they're in a really, really good spot. If they win next week, they are all but certainly in the playoff. They are all but certainly hosting a first-round playoff game, notably without having to play in the SEC title game.
Yeah, great.
Which I still think is kind of an advantage. I really like the spot for Oklahoma. And to your point, look, when I say I don't know how to feel about Oklahoma, I don't know the extent to which we can trust this style of play the deeper they get into the playoff. But clearly, they have done well enough, given their schedule, using that defense as their primary weapon to get them to a point now on the precipice of 10-2. So regardless of how pretty it looks, the numbers sort of speak for themselves. The wins are there. Mm-hmm. And to the earlier point, given the schedule, that's a pretty damn good accomplishment for Brent Venables, especially given that brought in a bunch of new talent, was very much on the hot seat coming into this season. Yeah. The schedule looked very formidable. It was formidable. To get to this point now where they're, a stone's throw away from making the postseason, regardless of whether they go into the postseason and win or not, that's, I think, beside the point. That they could go 10-2 against this is quite an accomplishment.
Buddy,
so good for them.
They went 6-6 and lost to Navy in a bowl game last year.
I know.
Oklahoma fans should be running into the streets screaming naked.
I know it.
Drinking nectar dripping from clouds. Everything is great.
I know it, man. Yeah, good for them. Good for them.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go next? What else stood out?
Pitt, Georgia Tech. I'll give you the choice right here. Right,
my beautiful Pitt Panthers.
Your beautiful Pitt Panthers. Penn State was more impressive in a weird way, maybe. Pitt almost choked away a crazy lead. Or speaking of actually choking away something crazy, do you want to go Kansas State, Utah?
I want to start with my beautiful Pitt Panthers.
Okay.
My beautiful Pitt Panthers won down 42-28.
Yeah.
Pitt may have been the snake in the toilet this week.
Yeah, that's fair. They were just ranked. It wasn't that pronounced a snake.
They jumped out to a 28-0 lead in the first quarter. They were cooking with gas, man. They did a lot of what we described in our preview, and I think what I said or what you said, I don't remember which one of us said it, but it was at least partially true that Pitt was good enough to keep the ground game in check and force the issue through the air. And Haynes King has been very good. He's been very solid, been very efficient, very responsible with the football, a lot of senior leadership. I mean, there's a reason that Haynes King has gotten this Georgia Tech team to where it is, in their own right on the precipice. If they had won, they would have qualified for the ACC championship game. But Pitt was able to get pressure on Haynes King. Pitt was able to shut down the ground attack. And by just leaning a little bit more on Haynes King and forcing him into some interesting situations, they got 2 big-time turnovers, 2 interceptions from him, including a backbreaker, an absolute backbreaker of a pick in the third quarter that went back the other way for 100 yards and a touchdown. That made it 35-14 Pitt at the time. That separation, it just killed a lot of momentum that Georgia Tech felt like it was building. So I got to credit the Pitt defense for coming to play against an offense that by some counts was the best in college football. They did a really, really good job getting some big turnovers, stopping Georgia Tech for the most part on the ground, and getting out to a big early lead. Because I think that was key here. Georgia Tech definitely was able to gain some momentum a little bit deeper into this one. Pitt came up with a few plays that were able, they were able to stop it. But jumping out to a huge lead, making Georgia Tech play from behind, maybe more so than what Pitt was able to do on defense, that changed the game plan for Georgia Tech considerably. They had to play with more urgency. It took them out of what they wanted to do, I thought, almost instantly by the end of the first quarter. So, big game for Pitt, Big game for Jakari and Turner, excuse
Yeah,
me.
Boozy Turner. Amazing. Another great performance. No Des Reed,
over
obviously.
200 yards, the freshman. I mean, just a really, really good campaign for the Pitt Panthers in this one. And now they find themselves in a situation where, with a little bit of help and a win next week over Miami, Pitt could end up in the ACC title game. As I've been warning, as the prophecy foretold back in August, the Pitt Panthers could make it actually happen.
I mean, you find yourself another college football podcast with a host who is going to both say James Franklin's going to be the head coach at Virginia Tech in November, and Pitt's going to be really good this year. Only Ty Hildenbrandt predicted both of those things. Do not fact check. Once again,
I'm pretty sure I picked Penn State to win the national championship.
Do not fact check.
Do not fact check. I did not have. I had Brett Pry getting fired, but I definitely did not have James Franklin getting fired mid-season and going to Virginia Tech before the end of the season.
Mason Heinschel's really fun. You mentioned Boozy Turner, obviously, who he's been really good this year as a rotation guy and took over and was probably the biggest engine reason why Pitt was able to win tonight. And the defense. I mean, it was running a defense. I'm curious to see what Mason Heinschel, because you can tell he's a freshman, kind of in a good way, that I don't think he is trusted to, and I don't know if he trusts himself to just settle into the pocket, climb the pocket, go through progressions, and that's okay. He's a freshman. His ability to improvise and just play make is crazy impressive for his age and experience level. He was really, really strong in a tough environment with a lot on the line. And like you said, Pitt came to play immediately. They generated points on both sides of the ball. They did hold on. You knew Georgia Tech was going to score some. You didn't know exactly how many. You didn't know what the exact rhythm of this game was going to be in the second half. That, Pitt jumped out the way that they did impressively, but that they were able to hold on and make plays throughout. Just a really impressive night for Pitt, and not a losable spot, but a tough spot. It wasn't losable because of how they started that game out. But it got kind of tight there at the end, and they managed to sort of find that next gear. And they have a real opportunity to, it's not even an opportunity. They'll likely be ranked once again ahead of that Miami game.
They will be.
And that game looms as pretty huge nationally.
It's enormous. That's an enormous game. That's an enormous game on 7 different levels. And I'll say it again. I think Pitt can hold down Miami's rushing attack.
Yeah.
I stand by what I've said now for 3 straight weeks.
Buddy, Virginia Tech did today. It doesn't take much lately.
I know. Pitt is built to stop the run.
Yeah.
They're built to stop the run, and I think they're going to do a lot of the same stuff to Carson Beck that they did to Haynes King.
Yeah.
Which is they're going to shut down the run, or at least defang it to the extent that it's not going to kill him. And they're going to find ways, either by bringing pressure or by mixing up coverage, to try and confuse Carson Beck. They cannot let Carson Beck sit in the pocket and pick them apart. I think he's very good at that. But I think we can all expect Pat Narduzzi is going to find some way to bring pressure. You're going to confuse him or try to confuse him with different coverage schemes. And they're going to see if they can turn over Carson Beck the way they turned over Haynes King today. Haynes King was not prone to interceptions before today.
No.
He just wasn't. He's been very efficient with the football. We know that Carson Beck has had a few moments where you can kind of get him to see ghosts, right? We saw that in the Louisville game.
Yep.
I think Pitt's going to try to do a lot of the same stuff, and I'm standing by what I said. Pitt's going to win this game against Miami. They're going to make the ACC interesting, and they'll probably need some help to get into that title game, but don't be surprised if Pitt emerges victorious when we're doing this stream a week from tonight.
Wow. Okay. I won't be. You've said it.
You wanted to talk about the Utah game.
Oh, my God.
This is probably the game of the day.
Yeah.
This game was nuts. This game was absolutely nuts. Speaking of snakes in the toilet, it looked like K-State was going to be a snake in the toilet.
Yeah.
51-47 was your final here. Where is my sound? This was, as we like to say, a shootout.
Yes.
Through and through a shootout.
Actually, can I jump in? Because I usually use Dvorak to spotlight terrible drive charts, but this is almost as funny in its own way. Do you mind?
No, Listen, this is your bit, man.
Punt, slow. Touchdown, touchdown, field goal. Punt, touchdown, punt, end of half. Touchdown, punt, touchdown, punt. Field goal, fumble, touchdown, punt, touchdown. Oh no, interception. End of game. It's a lot of touchdowns.
There's a lot of touchdowns. This game swung on, for my money, 2 pivotal plays. The first was Utah intercepting Kansas State on a 2-point try and then taking it the other way for 2 points.
Yep.
Ball was tipped, right? Ball was tipped into a Utah defender's hands. He goes the full distance. That makes the game 47-37. It was a 4-point swing, which, by the way, 4 points was the winning margin here. So that was significant. And then the second was on 4th and 1. Utah's got the ball on their own 39-yard line. 1:47 left on the clock. And Devin Dampier runs directly up the middle.
Yeah.
For 59 yards all the way down to like the 1-yard line. That gave Utah a goal-to-go circumstance. Extended the drive, obviously, and was what sprung them free and got them to the point where they could go in for the score and go up on K-State. K-State did have an opportunity to maybe pull some heroics. They didn't have any timeouts. I think it was under a minute. You and I were messaging back and forth like, what? This is going to go one of 2 ways. It's either going to go great and K-State's going to have a heroic victory, or it's going to end in some sort of bad turnover, and it ended in a bad turnover.
Yeah, there was the weird thing. I forget who had the run at the end of the game, if it was Dampier or somebody else, where in watching the game after the fact, because we were doing our live stream, our USC Oregon live stream, that Utah had a long run, and it was run down at like the 3-yard line with like 1:58 left.
Yeah.
And then if they just let that dude score on that run, they have an additional minute with no timeouts. It's hard calculus to sort of compute when, it's all happening live fire. But no, this game was incredible. It was 31-21. I think the idea that Kansas State, who has been so weird on offense this season, was able to score 31 in the first half, running like they were able to run against Utah. And this game was at Utah, yes?
Yeah.
This game was at Utah. Kansas State completely beat up in their front 7. Their offensive line has not been good this season. I did see that it was Matt Wells' first game up in the booth. So maybe that happened as a difference maker. I don't know. Chris Kleiman made after the game, after the loss, made a big emotional speech in his presser about, people thinking that, they're just going through the motions and they made this conscious decision to really lock in on the run. Joe Jackson got so much exercise for Kansas State in a losing effort. Nearly went for 300 yards. They went right at Utah and succeeded. They went directly at Utah. And it wasn't just a collection of 90-yard runs. It was just chunky. But the final stat line was indicative of how successful Kansas State was against Utah. And honestly, the passing game wasn't there for Kansas State. I don't think Jace Brown played in this game, did he?
I didn't see him, no.
I don't think he was out there. So they're shorthanded on both sides of the ball. Utah, to their credit, is just making play after play and don't give up in this game. And it goes back and forth. Utah comes out on top. But in terms of a pure entertainment factor, that it did feel like Kansas State could have done the 1-2-3 Cancun thing. And they were just like, what if we just go directly at Utah and do not care about what we are or are not supposed to accomplish against the Utes? And I don't know why they didn't do this sooner against their schedule, but crazy impressive from Kansas State and slightly even more impressive for Utah for absorbing. Do you know how hard it is to win giving up 472 yards rushing? I mean, that's a win and a losing effort for Utah. Good God, man, but good job.
Yeah, I mean, Devin Dampier had a monster game.
He did. He was amazing.
He had a monster game. 259 through the air. He had 94 on the ground, 4 total touchdowns. He very much powered this Utah offense to victory. Obviously, he had that big run inside of 2 minutes to give them the opportunity to win in the first place. But, again, Ed, I don't know if we call this a clunker. I don't know what the terminology is for a game like this, but this was whoever has the ball last is basically going to win. It just had that tenor the full way through.
Yeah.
It got real crazy in the second half. And, we had people messaging us and calling in about this one left and right just because 51-47 is a pure shootout and a lot of fun. There wasn't much defense. And we saw two teams that were very good on the ground.
Yeah.
Very good on the ground. Even though Utah with Devin Dampier had a little bit more going through the air, obviously. But I was damn impressed with the plan that Kansas State had in this game. I thought they were going to get the win here. And if they had gotten the win, I mean, more to the previous point, we've talked about playoffs and where Miami's place is in the playoffs and where some of these teams, Vanderbilt's another one that's a little bit lower. A Utah loss would have gone a long way for a team like a Miami. It wouldn't have put them in, certainly not in as an
eliminator, though. Yeah.
But this would have been something that would have knocked Utah out and slid everybody else up a notch, and that would have been great for Miami. Miami did not have that luck, but Utah did, and a really nice win here, 51-47. At home, the crowd was going nuts. It looked like a great setting for a game. Obviously, they wish it wouldn't have been as close, but, you'll take the dub at this point.
Where are we going?
Let's stay in the Big 12 and talk about the BYU win.
Oh, yeah.
So, number 11 BYU on the road. A couple weeks ago, they lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a question last week against TCU. What kind of BYU team are we going to see? Are they going to be licking their wounds? Is there going to be a hangover? You and I both reacted to it by saying this might have been their most complete game yet.
Sure.
It maybe tasted their own blood or something like that. Sharpened their intensity. They looked really good. This game, again, was, I think, the epitome of BYU football. No turnovers. They had like 18 more minutes of possession, something like that. 7 of 14, somewhere in that neighborhood on third downs. They were very solid. They were led by LJ Martin, who had 222 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Bear Bachmeier, again, was excellent in whatever role they needed him to play. Seems like he might be gaining weight since you made the joke about him a couple weeks ago. I feel like every time I see Bear Bachmeier, he adds 10 pounds to his frame.
And
He's
it's
a big
all
boy.
like below the waist.
He's a big boy.
Just got tree trunks. Yeah.
He's a big boy. He's a big boy. He's tough to bring down, and he plays hard. At one point, both him and LJ Martin were a little nicked up, and that was danger zone.
Yeah.
Given the way they play offense. But, they were able to stay out there and finish this game out. And I think on the opposite side of the fence for Cincinnati, they showed a graphic on the broadcast, actually, that summed it up pretty well. Cincinnati had a turnover on downs on the BYU 3. They missed 3 field goals. And at one point, they were offside on a 4th down that ended up extending a BYU drive. So, look, you can go pretty far in this sport just by not shooting yourself in the foot.
Agree.
And a lot of BYU's wins haven't always been that pretty, but BYU does not shoot itself in the foot. They're a very disciplined team. They play however they need to in order to win a football game. And this was a prime example of that. Cincinnati had a chance here, by the way.
This was game somewhat late. Yeah.
They made it a game late, but BYU was just rock solid again. They were rock solid. They didn't shoot themselves in the foot. To go to Nippert at night and win a game, I mean, this is a place that has a bit of a reputation for being difficult to play at night.
Yep.
So to go there to get this win, knowing what the stakes were, BYU is not fully clinched yet, I don't believe, for the Big 12 title game, but right on the doorstep of it.
Correct. The only thing I'll add here is BYU, I think they gave up a long punt return that set up the first Cincinnati touchdown. But Cincinnati came into this game, I believe, as like the most efficient Big 12 running team.
Yes.
And against this BYU defense, and it's totally fair. I mean, obviously, LJ Martin had a huge game. Bear Bachmeier had like huge runs, 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s. BYU kind of seemed automatic as they iced the game away. It was BYU's defense, specifically the linebackers. These safeties have been terrific all year, that just smashed Cincinnati on the ground. I think Evan Pryor had a 27 or 28 yard run, and otherwise was like 6 carries for 7 or 8 yards. Brendan Sorsby did nothing on the ground. This team runs on everybody, and they got nothing against BYU. And so what BYU is able to do in terms of strangling and suffocating offenses and turning them into a one-dimensional offense is thrilling for the BYU defense. I think that's the story. BYU's defense has been better than their offense this season. That has been what has led the way. The BYU offense has been good, but it really has been the defense more than anything that has sort of set the standard for this year's run for BYU. And yeah, I mean, I think we're all crossing our fingers that don't care about who ends up in the Big 12 championship, that we get, a competitive rematch of Texas Tech BYU, because I mean, that just seems like the headline desire. And I'm here for headline desires, Ty. You know me.
One, I guess, interesting nugget that I should throw out there.
Please.
And I haven't heard enough people talk about this possibility yet, but I think it's real.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that, as we build to week 14 in conference championship week, we should at least put out there for people to understand and think about a little bit more. But, so much of the talk with regard to the playoff has been teams outside the top 12 worming their way in via a conference championship. And we're thinking of teams like a Tulane who might win the American. We're thinking of teams like, Georgia Tech or Pitt or whoever ends up winning the ACC is going to be in this category as well. Outside of the top 12, knocking out the last 2 teams in that top 12 and finding a way in, a backdoor into the playoff, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is also a scenario where BYU continues to win, Texas Tech continues to win. We get a rematch in the Big 12 championship game, and BYU beats them.
Yeah.
I don't think in that circumstance they're going to knock Texas Tech completely out of the playoff. And obviously, by virtue of a conference championship, that would get BYU in. These are hypotheticals. But in that scenario, it's a very real possibility that, given current rankings, Alabama would be out, which would trigger an entire firestorm in the sport. We saw it a little bit last year, but I think Alabama being left out again would certainly be cause for much debate in the college football universe. It would bring up a whole slew of questions about Kalen DeBoer and is he managing the team correctly? I mean, it would be really interesting for a solid 48 hours, if not longer, when we eventually get those brackets unveiled. So one of the many hypotheticals, just to kind of keep on your radar as a possibility, because it exists. The first game between Texas Tech and BYU wasn't particularly close, but rematches have a funny way of working themselves out in this sport. And just something to bear in mind. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can already see it weighing on Kalen DeBoer as he picks out all of his Penn State quarter zips. So we'll see how it all plays out, Ty. Where do you want to go next? You want to stay Big 12? You want to go
Let's stay in
elsewhere?
the Big 12. Okay, so let's sort of put a bow on this. We had Iowa State with a big win over K-State. We had both TCU and UCF with 3-point wins. TCU over Houston. Houston hooked a field goal attempt at the end, I think, to tie this one. UCF beat Oklahoma State, but we did have people messaging us like, hey, Oklahoma State's got a lead. Hey, okay.
They do, or they did. Yeah.
They did. And then ASU...
Slow start, but ended up beating Colorado, sort of going away. The game that I wanted to bring up, though, that was of the most interest to me was the Arizona Wildcats, baby. 41-17 over Baylor. Baylor just announced that Dave Aranda is coming back for another year. I had some Baylor folks messaging us saying, why? So, yeah.
About that. Arizona was not great in the first half of this game, and it was close for a while. But in the second half, they flipped a switch, man. In the second half, they outscored Baylor 27-0. Their defense stepped up. They got 3 turnovers in the fourth quarter, including a pick 6. Arizona's offense also looked great and very smooth in the second half, thanks to Noah Fafita, who looked good in the second half. They were also running it at will against Baylor. It was like a total 180 when you compare the first half to the second half. And again, we come back to the point. Arizona is not that far off. They're already going to have a very good season compared to preseason expectations. That much is, I think, already clear and certain. But they are not that far off from having a truly special season.
No, and that game next week is going to be huge. And it's just too bad we don't have Sam Levitt. But Jeff Sims has been pretty decent. All things considered. That game is huge next week. I can't remember the last time that matchup was just like, man, this is a toss-up and just like a high-quality game. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. And Arizona State still has sort of a mathematical chance to maybe find their way into that title game. I don't think it's likely. But there are stakes involved in this game, which always makes rivalries fun.
Yep, I agree.
I wanted to talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish for a second.
The floor is yours. I mean, that's probably all we really need to talk about. It's just about a second.
Just got murdered. There were a lot of crazy stats in this game. The final was 70-7. Notre Dame won.
Yeah.
Let me start off just by being fair to Syracuse. Syracuse is crazy injured right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're crazy injured right now. But that being said, Notre Dame was up 35-0 in the first quarter, despite running just 5 offensive plays. Okay. Here is their drive chart, or the drive chart of the game. I'm not going to play the music.
No,
thank you.
Go for it.
A pick 6, a block punt for a touchdown, and a pick 6 on the 3 opening drives for the Syracuse Orange. Then Notre Dame got the ball. They ran 1 play before Jeremiah Love ran directly up the middle for a 45-yard touchdown run. Then on their next drive, they ran 2 plays before giving the ball to Jadarian Price, who ran for a 58-yard touchdown. That's how you get the 35-zip in the first quarter. Notre Dame had more points than they did passing yards. 70 points, just 67 passing yards. They didn't have to pass.
Right.
Why bother? They scored 70 points for the first time since 1932, Dan.
Yeah.
And all told, it was 329 rushing yards on the ground, including 171 and 3 touchdowns for Jeremiah Love on just 8 carries. Yeah. The stats were gaudy. More to Matt Barry's point, if this truly was an eye test Saturday, I think Notre Dame passed it here. Syracuse may not be a good team. They may be extraordinarily injured at the moment. But 70-7 in the manner that Notre Dame got to 70 points was damn impressive. Mm-hmm. And it could have been a lot worse if they really wanted it to be. So I thought, as somebody who follows Notre Dame, there is no way you can look at this showing, both just purely looking at the box score and the points, or by watching the game and just feeling the general vibe of the game. There is nothing but good vibes coming out of this one on the Notre Dame side.
Yeah.
This was a dominant showing any way you slice it. And as I said, it could have been a hell of a lot worse.
Had the rhythm of like when like a prime Gino Auriemma UConn women's basketball team takes on like in an exhibition a team from the Philippines. We're just like, yes, it's 35-0 after a couple of minutes, but like, what are we expecting here? Yeah, Notre Dame just limb from limb, ripped them apart, and it's took care of business in a highly efficient and violent way.
Let's stay in the ACC.
Okay.
We had some results here to discuss. We had Miami 34-17 over Virginia Tech. SMU running one up here on Louisville 38-6.
No Miller Moss in that one.
Yeah, speaking of crazy injured. Duke won. That game was nuts.
Mm-hmm. Had to come
32-25 over North Carolina. Wake Forest is now 8-3 with a win over Delaware. And Clemson won 45-10 over Furman. I believe I don't have the score written down for some reason, but Cal beat Stanford.
They did. No. Stanford beat Cal.
Stanford beat Cal, excuse me.
Comfortably,
that's right.
Yes, they beat Cal. They did really well. I want to say North Carolina committed 12 penalties for over 100 yards in this.
So look, Duke had a chance late to kick a go-ahead field goal.
Yeah.
And the highlight that everybody's going to see is the fake.
Great fake.
Instead of going for the game winning or the go-ahead field goal, they decide they're going to fake it. it was very successful. They ran it down to the 1. They punched it in for the touchdown. They got the 2-point conversion, a little bit of a front door cover for those who play the betting game. But I just got to compliment this fake field goal because what they did was basically an option pitch. Usually, when we see this type of play, the holder for a righty kicker takes the snap, stands up, turns to his right, and they run around the right side. Instead, what happened this time, or they do the LSU thing, right, where the kicker runs behind the holder throws it back over his head, and then he runs basically a toss sweep out to the right.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a whole lot of instances, and I'm sure there have been examples of it in the past, where instead of that, the holder takes the ball, pitches it directly out in front of him as the kicker runs,
like a little
in effect,
option. Yeah,
a toss sweep out around the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And that's what they did to great effect here. Again, he ran it down to the 1. They were able to punch it in. That gave them enough separation to win this one and cover 32-25. But bit of a wild game. There was also a play earlier where Duke went forward on 4th down. We were on stream. We showed the highlight of it. Guy just sort of running around aimlessly in the backfield, like pulling the old Tecmo Super Bowl, waiting until something opens up. It was supposed to be
like a double pass that wasn't there. Then he was like, well, I better start running backwards and hope for the best. And
so this is definitely not the cleanest game in the world, but had some fireworks down the stretch in a cool rivalry.
Win your clunkers. As always, a win is a win.
There it is. The SMU game stood out to me.
Okay.
Just because SMU has some real stakes now. And, again, Louisville's crazy banged up. They were without Miller Moss. They were starting a freshman, Deuce Adams, at quarterback, without 2 running backs. I mean, just crazy hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to beat a quality team like SMU given those circumstances. This one felt like it was over almost right away.
Yeah.
Obviously the injuries don't help, but this is a quality SMU team that I think is hungry to try and get back to that ACC championship. They're on the precipice of doing it. What they need is one more win, and they either need, I think, a Georgia Tech loss or Virginia to lose a game. Obviously, Georgia Tech lost tonight, so I have to go back and check the math exactly on what it takes for SMU. But SMU right now, if you're an SMU fan, you feel pretty good about where things stand.
Definitely. They're finishing quite strong. The defense has taken a nice step forward and did it against a shorthanded Louisville team.
How do you feel about Miami, Dan?
Largely good. Continued pop between Carson Beck and Malachi Toney. The running game kind of, I don't know. It's not bad. It's above average, but it's sort of slowed down recently, which I don't think is a great sign. Obviously, they're beat up in that running back room, but turning to youth with a ton of talent. Seemed like it was going to pay bigger dividends, and they gave up some bigger runs to Virginia Tech. I don't think they were ever truly in danger in this game. And so because they have the defense that they have, they're still a team with penalty issues. Ty, I know you've harped on this a bunch, that Mario Cristobal keeps talking about needing to address them. I don't know what they're doing to address them in practice because they seem to be lingering on and on. But no, I mean, a really nice day between Carson Beck and Malachi Toney. That was enough, made enough plays on defense, and set up a really nice showdown against Pitt next week. And Virginia Tech is in their full-on look at our new toy mode with James Franklin giving his.
He looks uncomfortable,
presser.
Dan. I'm telling you, I understand why everybody's excited about James Franklin at Virginia Tech.
Yeah,
he looks uncomfortable to me, or maybe I am projecting my level of uncomfortable on
that's possible.
What I am seeing. It does not feel right to see him in the maroon, but look, they got him. Penn State's still looking for their coach. I don't know who they're going to end up with. I can talk about that in a second, but
I think he screwed up. Enter Sandman. I think he said enter the Sandman or something. Like, that's okay. It's okay. You're new. You'll figure it out. But I don't know. Got to get that song right. That's a pretty big one.
By the way, if SMU wins, they're in. I should.
Oh, they are.
Okay, if they
great.
win, they're in. Yeah, that's all it takes. Because of the Georgia Tech loss tonight, they win, they're in.
Okay. Good for the Mustangs.
Let's go over to the Big Ten for a second, if we can.
Let's. With your newly bowl eligible Northwestern Wildcats, the streets on the North Shore of Chicago running purple.
The streets on the North Shore are running purple. They won 38-35 in Wrigley over
Wrigley,
Minnesota.
Missed field goal attempt late, a makeable field goal from Minnesota, and it was a complete performance on offense for Northwestern. Drake Lindsay had a really nice game for Minnesota in Wrigley, and you don't see a lot of 38-35 Northwestern games come across.
You don't. You really don't.
I didn't watch a ton of this, but from what I saw, a lot of excitement on the Northwestern end. They were down 15, I want to say.
Yeah, man.
And just kept churning, kept finding big plays. Preston Stone had a nice day. They're going bowling.
Stop me when I get to a game that jumps out to you, okay?
Okay.
Ohio State 42-9.
It jumps out to me. Not the results, because this game, it was a slow start for Ohio State. Defense was great, as expected. No Carnell Tate, no Jeremiah Smith. So I don't know what level of concern there is. They didn't seem too concerned on the sideline, but there's a pretty big game next week.
Yeah.
And they seem to be shorthanded. Bo Jackson's the guy, which is nice to establish at this point. Curious to see what those dudes look like, because this was a Max Clare game for Ohio State. Receivers definitely didn't pop to me for Ohio State anytime I turned to this game. And so a lot has been made about how Ohio State is sort of taking a very slow approach and trying to peak in January, which I think is a good idea.
Yeah.
Slow start, turnover. I don't know. Nothing actually concerning for when they play in big games, because they still have that quarterback and defense combination. But I don't know if your Winter Wonders and Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith are not their full selves, even when they're on the field and suited up. It's not my favorite thing for Buckeyes.
Michigan won 45-20 on the road against Maryland. They were 2-touchdown favorite going into this one.
Nice complete performance. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought this was a good showing. There's
no Jordan Marshall. Yeah.
No Jordan Marshall. There's always potential when you've got a big game on deck, especially a rivalry like the game, that you could see some weird results the week before. Also, this was Maryland. And they just announced that Mike Locksley is going to be retained. There was some conversation about whether or not they were going to relieve him of command to go in a different direction. So, look, Maryland got off to a hot start. Stop me if you've heard this before. They're finishing with a bit of a whimper. They are very young, which I think they have going for them. I do like their quarterback, Malik Washington, but at the end of the day, Michigan's just a better team. They're now 9-2. Again, to continue the trend and the theme that I have been bringing up with all of these conferences.
Yeah.
If Michigan were to knock off Ohio State next week, that opens up some possibilities for the Big Ten championship game. If Ohio State wins that game, and barring any kind of collapse from Indiana, we're going to see Ohio State, Indiana, 1 versus 2 in that Big Ten championship game. If, in fact, Ohio State were to lose again for the 5th straight year to Michigan, opens up the possibility for Oregon, should they beat Washington. If Oregon should lose on the road to Washington, it could mean that Michigan gets into that game against Indiana. So these are unlikely possibilities, but I think it warrants mentioning that there is still some wiggle room atop that Big Ten, even though elements of it feel like something of a foregone conclusion.
Yes. More specifically to this game and what could be interesting ahead of next week. So Max Bredesen got hurt, who has been their heartbeat of the trench stuff as the fullback, sort of H-back, and a big deal in their offense and the way that they operate and their power rushing attack. No Samaj Morgan, no Ernest Hausman in this one for Michigan. I don't think they were even listed on the injury report, so that's sort of curious if they're just resting. Who knows? I don't know the specifics there, but a nice, comfortable win. Obviously, they weren't missed. Jordan Marshall, I think by all accounts, should be good to go for Ohio State.
Elsewhere in the Big Ten, just real quick, Dan, if we could, we had a win for Iowa. A late field goal gets the dub for them. We had a win for Wisconsin over Illinois, a ranked win.
Just suffocated them as well. Illinois could not do anything on offense. And not that Wisconsin was blowing the doors off of them, but they played winning football once again. took down another. I don't know if Washington was ranked when they beat them, but they took down another ranked team in Illinois.
Washington currently up 27-0.
Saw that.
Over UCLA in the third quarter at time of recording. It looks like they're going to go on to win here. And elsewhere, Penn State Nittany Lions.
Yeah, man.
37-10, man. Over Nebraska.
Penn State's going bowling next week, right? They got to beat Rutgers. They're going bowling. That's not bad.
Ethan Grunkemeyer missed one pass. He was 11 of 12, 181 and a touchdown. Katron Allen had 160. Nick Singleton had 2 touchdowns on the ground. Was a contributor through the air in the receiving game. This is a very, very nice showing for Penn State. And I was genuinely questioning what this was going to look like down the stretch. After James Franklin gets hired, where's the team at? What are they playing for? Are they playing for themselves? Are they playing to get the year over with? Where are they at? This was a really nice showing against the Nebraska team that's got its own issues for sure. But the other thing that I noticed, and I'm going to point out, I'm not necessarily slamming NBC or anyone for doing this.
Okay.
Because I understand the storyline. NBC came in real hot with the pro Terry Smith propaganda. Oh, yeah. I mean, they talked about it endlessly on the broadcast.
Is he interviewing? Or
I believe
interviewed?
I believe he's interviewed for the job.
Okay. Pat
Kraft said as much when he gave his remarks right after they relieved James Franklin of command that Terry Smith would be considered for the coaching job. You kind of have the standard thing going on right now where the players trying to rally behind their interim coach because they all know him and they love him. Terry Smith is a Penn State guy through and through. So he's definitely going to have some support in that building. I would like to think there are some better options out there, more accomplished as a head coach. Not to say Terry Smith is not qualified, but
right.
It was just notable to me. I would expect it from the team to be walking around with hire Terry Smith signs.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of standard whenever there's kind of a team favorite.
And he's been around forever, right?
Of course. Whenever you got a team favorite like that as the interim coach, he's going to have a lot of support within the building. But I did not necessarily expect it on the NBC side. And they were definitely coming in pretty hot. Laying it on real thick.
Okay.
From Blackledge right on down, that Terry Smith should be considered. So I think he will be considered. I still I don't think he'll be the guy, but look, the results speak for themselves. 27-point win at home over a team with, if nothing more, a pretty good defense, Nebraska.
Yeah,
I think this was an impressive showing for Terry Smith and Penn State.
Yeah, strategies seem to be, I went through this one quickly, but just like sit on the clock, right? Be successful. No. Don't give the ball back if you don't need to. And the first half was a long touchdown drive, a long field goal drive, another long touchdown drive, a short touchdown drive off a short field.
Yeah.
And more of the same in the second half. And it was Katron Allen, and it was an accurate Ethan Grunkemeyer. I don't know if how many he was popping deep, but he was accurate as hell, and a nice win, nice comfortable win for Penn State. And again, they should finish 6-6, all things considered, after you lose the way that you do to UCLA, Northwestern, and then Iowa.
Yeah,
a nice turnaround run so far.
And let me just add, and I know this has been popular in the Penn State circles, but it's nice to see Kobe Howard out there. Kobe Howard is their young receiver, their freshman receiver, who everybody was gung-ho on in the build-up to the season. And then the season started, and he was nowhere to be found. Didn't see him at all.
Had a long
everybody was talking this kid up in the preseason, a freshman out of Florida, I believe, and was just nowhere. And so they have given him a little bit of a run now over the last few weeks. And this is not to say he's getting like a mass target share or anything like that. He only had one catch in this game, but we have seen his ability to produce chunk plays, and we saw it again. He had one catch for 31 yards in this game. And it's just, of course, everything's easier in hindsight after you fire a coach and after the season goes off the rails. But this is just one of the decisions among many that we have seen this season in the Penn State world that does leave you scratching your head a little bit. Given all the issues they've had at receiver, and obviously they went out and they tried to bring a bunch of guys in, but it seemed apparent in the run-up to the season that they had somebody recruited that was on the roster that they could plug in there and maybe get some chunk plays out of, and they didn't use them. So right. I'm glad to see that he's getting a run here. I hope he sticks around because everybody seems to like his potential. But if nothing more, even if they're not playing for national championship, even if it's just for bowl eligibility, it's good to see him out there.
Where do you want to go? You want SEC real quick?
SEC. Let's close out with the SEC group of 5, and then we'll play some messages.
Sure.
Vandy 45-17 over Kentucky, combined with Texas 52-37 over Arkansas.
Yes.
2 dominant offensive showings here.
Mm-hmm.
On the Vandy side, they were up 45-3 at one point on Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Just murdered. And I think they're about to get a 5-star quarterback as well.
About to get the 5-star quarterback, the flip, who I think you told me decommitted twice now from Georgia.
He hasn't decommitted the second time from Georgia yet, but that appears to be what's happening.
Pavia had 532 total yards, 6 total touchdowns. Crazy showing. And then on the Texas side, Arch had 6 touchdowns. He's the first quarterback in Texas history to have a passing, a rushing, and a receiving touchdown all in the same game.
Yes.
389 through the air, 4 passing touchdowns, had the rush, had the trick play touchdown on the Philly special. 52-37 again was your final.
Yeah, thorough performance from Texas. Arguably their first thorough performance on their SEC slate. They had a comfortable win against Oklahoma, but I think 1 offensive touchdown in that one. So all it took was playing against arguably the worst defense in the SEC, especially the worst pass defense. But they did what a good team should do. They still gave up a lot of points. Arkansas was still able to move the ball, but this game was identified as a potential sloppy spot between the Georgia and Texas A&M games, and it most certainly was not. Arch was protected. The offensive line was there. It was a pretty complete performance. Good to see that Texas may have some rhythm against, ahead of Texas A&M, which obviously is an enormous one next week.
For those listening at home, you may have noticed I didn't mention the Florida State game from earlier in the week in the ACC.
State, yeah.
And the reason I didn't do that is because I wanted to put it in this context.
Okay.
Tennessee beat Florida by a 31-11 score.
Like immediately.
They were up 31-0 at half. They cruised the rest of the game. They had 452 yards on offense. Florida couldn't get anything going on offense. And it is not lost on me that given the effort, the level of effort we saw from Florida this week, which felt like they were totally checked out to me. I don't know if that's fair, but that's how it felt to watch.
Yeah.
You combine that with the fact that Florida State had an incredibly ugly game against NC State, where I wondered a lot of the same stuff about Florida State when they played earlier in the week. Like, this is a team that it was an ugly affair. Okay. They were mistake prone. It was just an ugly affair for the Noles. Florida and Florida State play next week, Dan.
They do.
In perhaps one of the great 1-2-3 Cancun Bowls we've seen in a long time.
By the way, they technically don't have to. It's not a compulsory thing. They can just have a phone call and decide, we don't need to do this. This is no contest. We're good.
You suggested maybe they'll play table tennis instead.
I would love camp games to decide this.
Yeah, I suggested maybe they could do some sort of Revenge of the Nerds style rotation of events situation to decide who gets the win here. But certainly on the football side, it feels to me like these are 2 teams that are checked out. Florida State had 4 turnovers. Congrats to NC State for getting bowl eligible.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how Norvell comes back from this. This is a really bad showing on the Florida State side. So this is all to say, congratulations, Tennessee, on the win. You win in the swamp. Nice rivalry win for the Vols. But now moving forward, the game next week between Florida and Florida State, I have to put that on a run the board game. I have to.
Okay.
I have to put it on there. I have no idea what the point spread's going to be. I have no idea how you even handicap that game. To me, it just seems like it's 2 teams that are checked out. I think we saw that from both teams this week. The fact that they play each other next week presents an incredible opportunity for a double checkout game.
Listen, whatever happens next week, if Florida State does not have a punt return in which a random player has a full-on punt doink off of his head.
That was incredible.
And bounce all the way back to the original line of scrimmage to have it recovered by the punter for a first down for the other team. As long as that doesn't happen, or in a close game, if the punt returner doesn't have the punt bounce off of his face mask 5 minutes later, Florida State might be in an okay position.
Elsewhere in the SEC, A&M won big. Georgia won big. Alabama won big. Auburn took it to your beautiful Mercer Bears.
Yeah, but Deuce Knight had 7,300 yards, so that was okay.
Deuce Knight got the call. Deuce Knight had a really good game at quarterback for Auburn. We'll see what happens next week in the Iron Bowl. And last but not least, South Carolina with a win over Coastal Carolina, 51-7. Oh, and LSU, by the way, 13-10 over Western Kentucky. We'll see what happens next week when they square off against Oklahoma.
Oh, and also in the SEC, Hugh Freeze shot a 73. His mid-irons were actually humming. Short game was here and there, but all in all, he was happy with his day.
Over in the American, which I think figures to be the team or the conference with the inside track to get a team into the playoff, we did have a win for Tulane on the road against Temple, 37-13. We had a resounding, crazy statistical game for North Texas. 56-24 over Rice. Drew Mestamaker at one point had something like 40 yards per attempt.
That seems good.
We also had a win for UTSA in resounding fashion over ECU, which basically knocks ECU out of the running for the American. And to just sort of close things out, we had a win for Tulsa over Army.
It's a good win.
We had a win for South Florida over UAB.
Yep.
And just sort of American adjacent here, I guess, we had UConn with a 48-45 win over Florida Atlantic to get to 9-3 on the year.
The only time, this is the first time in history, I think UConn has won back-to-back 9-win affairs. So
crazy, man.
Really great for UConn.
I think right now, the winner of the American is the team that has the inside track. Now, James Madison did win their game. They needed a late bit of heroic to emerge victorious over Washington State.
Yeah.
This is a good game. They needed some style points. They didn't get any style points. And this was not a particularly great game in terms of what teams did on third downs. But JMU did outgain Wazoo. They did not have a good game from Alonzo Barnett. I remember we talked about that a little bit when we previewed the game. I thought maybe he'd have a better game, but it wasn't particularly great for him. But this was Wayne Knight leading the way on the ground for the Dukes. And they've done it all year. Give the ball to Wayne Knight. Run the ball well, play solid on defense.
Yeah.
That was sort of their formula here. That's what they've done all year. That's what they did in this one here against Wazoo.
And honestly, again, I don't know what's Wazoo's record now. 5-6.
Right.
It's a strange schedule. It's a strange year. It's year one for Jimmy Rogers. All things considered, I think he's done a pretty decent job.
I agree. Completely agree. Any other games around college football that you want to highlight here, Dan, before we play some messages, before we do some doodlers, before we let the fine people go?
Well, I mentioned New Mexico winning against Air Force, and I want to say San Diego State was up in a low-scoring game when we started out this show. It's San Diego State up 18-3 right now. Fresno's up 17-14. These are live games, so that's a back-and-forth game, it looks like, against Utah State. Friday night, UNLV absolutely demolished Hawaii. You loved the Rainbow Warriors there.
Oh, my God, they got hammered.
I know. But a nice game for Anthony Calandria. Boise State took it to Colorado State, and once again, New Mexico over Air Force, and the could have an interesting Mountain West championship game. A lot of outcomes to be determined next week that will affect that. Elsewhere, I think Southern Miss lost. I want to say in a back and forth game.
Yeah.
South Alabama in a bit of a shootout. I'm trying to think what else jumps out to me that's on my list to watch when I have the time early in next week's time.
Man, I watched the Louisiana-Arkansas State game on Thursday night.
How was that?
That was one of the wildest starts to a game I've seen in forever.
Okay.
They just kept fumbling back and forth. It was insane. There was no defense for the first half of that game. It didn't feel like any team could tackle. It was just super sloppy, but kind of a lot of fun to watch, sort of what you'd expect from midweek football. And so it was entertaining, if not a little bit frustrating at points, because it could have gone for a little bit more efficiency in my football.
Right. That's fair. By the way, Western Michigan with it's Lance Taylor, right? Their head coach running the Army, like shotgun option attack.
Yeah.
Having a really nice year in the MAC and just destroyed Northern Illinois. And I think they're the only MAC team with only one loss in conference. So really nice year for Western Michigan.
We got a bunch of phone calls, Dan. Shay tells me it's one of the better reverb segments that we've had all year.
Nice.
Had a bunch of verballers dial in, 855-VERBAL-3. Bear in mind, we've got one more reverb segment next week. And that's pretty much it. I don't believe we've done it for conference championship week in the past because there were fewer teams playing. So it's nice to see that the verballerhood is going out strong. We got one more week to knock this out of the park. Let's see what we're up against. Here's what you had to say in week 13.
This is Scott from Utah. This is Brent from Grapevine, Texas.
Hey guys, Grandma B here from Oregon. Snake in the toilet doesn't quite work for me, but you're still my favorite. Go Ducks!
The snake was in Utah's toilet. Its name was Kansas State running back Joe Jackson. Absolute dude, running for 293 yards, an all-time stadium record in a losing effort. Ba-ba-ba-ba.
That Kansas State game just took 10 years off of my life. I feel like Wesley from The Princess Bride, except instead of Prince Humperdinck and the Count, it is Avery Johnson and Joe Jackson. I'm going to throw up. That was my last game as a student, and I am feeling sick.
Snake in the toilet Saturday? How about Sleeper Saturday?
You think I, as an Ohio State fan, am worried about next week's game? Preposterous. I'm fine. We're fine. It's going to be fine.
Notre Dame, Syracuse, limb from limb.
Starting to jump on Dan's Gary Danielson hate. 27-35 in the fourth quarter. I guarantee you he does not understand any of the math behind going for two in that situation.
Deuce, the dude night coming to an Iron Bowl near you. Where you go?
If the world knew about the steamy antics that occur in the Baptist Student Union in Ruston, Louisiana, more people would recognize that Louisiana Tech is bowl eligible.
I ignored your window of opportunity, but did just see Cats, as in the Missouri Tigers, get shut down by the Oklahoma defense as the Sooners refused to donate to your favorite pet charity, Boomer Sooner.
Farewell and adieu to you fair SC Trojans. Farewell and adieu by their dust you've been slain. You'd received orders to sail up the coastline. Now you've failed so badly, only LinkedIn complains.
Arch Manning's stat line tonight, 389 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, 1 receiving touchdown. That is Arch Madness. Bring on the Aggies. Hook 'em horns.
This is Carol calling from New Haven, Connecticut to say Harvard still sucks. Go Bulldogs.
A wise man once said, life is not a waste of time and time is not a waste of life. So let's get wasted and have the time of our life. FIU is going bowling.
This for everybody going through tough times.
There we go. All right.
Nice.
Beautiful. Thank you to one and all for dialing in, Dan.
By the way, I mentioned WMU in Western Michigan. It's Central Michigan who hired Matt Drinkall, and they're running really nicely. Not Western. Continue.
Lehigh Mountain Hawks, Dan.
You know what? Honestly, we don't need to get into specifics.
There was a point in time where the Lehigh Lafayette game was the best game on TV.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. Early in the day, watching some of these early window games, you and I were going back and forth. It's a tough watch when you don't have the yellow 1st and 10 line.
That's tough. Yeah, and they also have the camera fixed on the clock on the scoreboard. There's no digital clock. It's
right.
Just a shot of the clock on the scoreboard. Continue.
That's right. But this is a back and forth game. It was a good game. It was a fun game. Lehigh emerged victorious. They're now going to go into the FCS playoffs. So the Patriot League lightning round will continue for as long as Lehigh continues its plight in the FCS playoffs. We shall see what happens with Harvard, Dan.
I mean, Yale beat them to win the Ivy. That's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, good for Yale. I don't have any other FCS insights. Who won the Brawl of the Wild, Ty? I'm putting you on.
I believe Montana State won that one, Dan.
Ooh.
Number 3 over number 2.
Good job.
31-28, maybe. I want to say. Thank you to everybody for dialing in. Do you got Dude Alerts handy, Dan Rubenstein?
I do.
Each week we pay homage to the guys out there who have awesome weeks. We make a social media post. They're called a Dude Alerts. Who do we got for week 13, Dan?
I've got Joe Jackson, Kansas State. Jeremiah Love ran for 7,200 yards for Notre Dame against Syracuse on 6 carries. Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt should be retired. Wyatt Young, Drew Mestemaker's target for North Texas. Boozy Turner, we mentioned at Pitt, the freshman. Bunch of quarterbacks had huge days, some in losing efforts, like Caden Veltkamp for FAU. Went for almost 500 yards and a couple touchdowns in a losing effort in that shootout. Braylon Braxton at Southern Miss in a losing effort, but threw 3 touchdowns at 400 yards. Colton Joseph had a great game for Old Dominion in their big win over Georgia Southern. Dominic Richardson for Tulsa in their upset against Army went for over 200 yards. I mean, Deuce Knight, it's against Mercer, but it's a dude in that, like, what's he going to do against Alabama next week? Are they just getting him ready to throw for the Wolves? I guess so.
Oh my gosh.
So
That
we
was
got Iron
crazy.
Bowl intrigue based on Deuce Knight's dudeability.
And by the way, speaking of Auburn, we got this suggestion. Brian Batty
Yes,
from Auburn. So
Senior Day.
on Senior Day, right? He was shot in May of 2024. Today he walked out on the field to be honored on Senior Day with his class, which was like a really cool moment.
Yes, agree.
So let's give him a dude alert, shall we?
Absolutely. That absolutely has earned it with his recovery.
Want to thank everybody for tuning in here this evening. It was a long day for us. We did the long stream.
Yes.
Did our best to keep track of all the games. The schedule will be a little bit different this week. For those of you who watch the videos, Dan's going to be out of the normal office, so it'll look a little bit different, but we're still going to do what we do here in preparation for a gigantic Week 14. I don't think we're going to be releasing an episode on Thanksgiving because we've tried that in the past, and trust me, nobody downloads anything on Thanksgiving. Nobody has time to watch videos on Thanksgiving. So in all likelihood, we'll be putting our episodes out a little bit earlier in the week, but you're still going to get the same content that you need to get ready again for a massive rivalry week. Crazy that we're already here, but it is going to be very significant. There are big games on Friday. There are big games all throughout the day on Saturday. And of course, there will be a lot of conversation on Sunday as we have championship games figured out, as we start talking a little bit more intently about what the playoff matchups could be. There is a lot still to be settled, and we've only got 2 weeks left. This is the way this thing goes in college football, at least in the good years, Dan. So I'm excited about what is in store. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we appreciate the Verballerhood supporting us for what we do, not just earlier today with our stream, but by following, by subscribing, by supporting us out at verballers.com.
Agree.
All right, folks, thank you so much again for downloading, for listening, for supporting. We will be back in very short order here to get you prepped and ready and excited for Week 14. In the meantime, for that fine gentleman over there, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt, thank you as always. We'll talk to you soon. In the meantime,